Hi everyone, so this is part 2 of how not to build a deck. So I'm going to be working on the second deck right here, okay? Okay, so as you can tell, we have a beam that's supporting pretty much the whole deck, okay? And when you look at it, the way these idiots designed it was actually they drove in 2 bolts and a nail, okay? And there's no support underneath, okay? So typically what you would do is at least try to notch the wood or something, so now the weight of the deck is supported on the beam rather than just 2 carriage bolts and a nail. There's also 2 more legs, 2 more posts down there that are pretty much designed the same way. You can tell with that angle. In addition to that, you will notice too that they did a double beam, okay? So it spans from that post to that post, okay? And again, with great craftsmanship, and I'm being sarcastic, what they did was they just cut the wood here, okay? And then they drove in the nails. And I do give them credit for driving in nails every, well, close to 16 on center. Okay, so this is a 2x8, all right? So what I plan to do is, and I've already started to dig, I wanted to support it, and I said, as I mentioned before, reinforce it, because I can't have a deck that this big being supported on a couple bolts on each post. So what I plan to do is dig a few holes. This is close to 40 inches straight into the ground. And I know I need some more sonotubes, but basically rest a post right above these 2 double beams, one here, one there, and so forth, okay? That way, when it's resting on a beam, and now at least I don't have to worry about these bolts eventually one day, these 2 right here, breaking on us, and then before you know it, it's a huge disaster waiting to happen. So I am going to do it on that end right down there. Now, in addition to that, and I already purchased these are the Simpson ties. I'm going to place one here and bolt it through the post. Now, another thing that I do notice is that all the posts on this deck drive into the ground, and which is good to some degree, but not so good, because what happens over time is that the moisture will get to the bottom parts of the post and eventually start to rot it away. So once I finished supporting that span, that long span of that beam, then I have to raise the deck to some, a little bit, not much, just to cut the post at the bottom, take it out, and then put in the sonotube. Now I'm pretty sure that there is a foundation, a footing, but it's underground. So so I'm going to do little by little. Okay, so far we've had these 2 holes dug, and I have my friend Jaritza over there. She's taking the rest of the holes.
Failed to tell me that there was a shit ton of rocks.
Oh my god, and those are most of the rocks that she pulled out.
I thought I was being hired to dig holes, not to be a minekeeper.
Thanks, Ritza. I already have the foundations in. There's 1 there, and 2 back there. I'm waiting for them to dry so I can drive in those post brackets. Okay, so all right, and there's the 1/2 inch hole that I will be placing the Simpson tie on. Okay, fits just right. Okay, so my goal right now is to get the wood not that close, because I still have to wedge it in through with the bracket here, but close enough. But also, you want most of the bolt that's on that the Simpson tie post bracket to be more into the ground than anything. Okay, so here I have it measured for 14 inches. I'm actually going to cut it maybe 13 and 3/4. Okay, so now I have my my bracket here. I'm just gonna place it right on the wood itself. Get an idea where it is. And then that way I can just slide it through, all right? And then you wanna check to make sure it's plumb. And then using the Simpson structural ties, Simpson structural screws. So I'm gonna drill this one in, and then everything else will follow thereafter. What I'm using are the strong drive structural screws. They're 2.5. So the reason why I'm using these is because I want them to actually bite both pieces of wood. So I'm gonna use that all throughout the project. So now that everything is plumb, I'm gonna use this wrench, adjustable. I don't have a 28 or 29 millimeter to move that 3/4 bolt or 3/4 wrench. So I'm gonna make it snug so I can screw in everything else, and then after that move on to the next one. Okay, so I had placed all the structural screws all throughout. I still have to put one more here. Other than that, everything else is all set. So now we're going to complete the other 3 today. Okay, so here is the finished product. Use the appropriate structural screws. Everything is plumb, so you have everything with additional support, because as I mentioned, that outer beam is not really as functional, because a lot of the weight is actually on this right here, and then you can tell the bolts that they use with the single nail. So and that's it. So again, this is more reinforcement, because now everything's not supported on those 2 bolts on each leg and possibly a nail. My next job is now to actually unearth those legs, the one in between, which is right there, and then the furthest one out there, because they are going into the ground. These are actually tied down, so I probably won't get that until next season, next year. So and the reason why I did this primarily is because when it does snow here up in upstate New York, we have a lot of and sometimes it gets up to a foot, and then it melts a little bit, turns into ice, and then more snow on top of that. So I know it's super heavy because I actually shoveled the deck to make room and a path for my dogs. So I feel a lot more safer now that I did that. There's still a lot more I need to do. But at least I know that will hold, because everything else looks like it's underneath the deck is actually more supported the way it should be. However, I do want to change those too. Okay, so I finally completed everything on the lower parts of these the post, and basically I tightened every bolt on the bottom of each one, and then I turned it, just when I knew it was just nice and snug, I turned everything to about maybe a 1/4 turn. So basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to get some of the weight off of that main post right there, as well as the other 2 that are behind it, so it's kind of evenly distributed. So I mean, the number of turns on that bolt is kind of arbitrary, but I mean, it had to be nice and snug, and then maybe a quarter turn thereafter. If anyone knows how many turns I have to make it to kind of evenly distribute the load, let me know. But at least it'll work for now. All right. Okay, so the reason why I chose this as opposed to your traditional ones where you kind of set in concrete is because I really wanted to adjust the height of this the tie, you know, for the post, and this is probably the better way. If I had to use the other one where you have to set it in concrete, basically what I would need to do is raise that deck a little bit, like I did with the first one over there. Okay, so but it's fairly heavy, and it's a 16-foot stretch. Okay, so this is, I found, much easier. Now, the downfall of this is that it's not tied down into the concrete, okay? So, I mean, if you were to have any uplifting force, like a hurricane or really strong tornado or what have you, this is just gonna come out of the concrete and your neighbor might have a new deck, okay? So, that's, so it's really dependent, to my understanding, it's dependent on the area you live in, right? Okay, so if you live down south, say for example Florida, Texas, or Alabama, or you know where those hurricanes were hitting, this is really not a good idea. Okay, but you know, living upstate New York, yeah, we get snow, we get the heavy winds, but nothing comparable to what they get hit with down south. Now, for the installation process, this is what I had originally, okay? And the reason why I wrapped it in painter's tape is because I wanted to place it inside the concrete, so it's a wet install. And I tried it. The only problem I found was, because this is fairly heavy, okay? And what happens, it actually starts to sink into the concrete. So, and, you know, it probably wasn't the best idea. Maybe I had to wait for the concrete to dry a little bit longer, you know? So, but I opted to let the concrete post base dry, and then I just, using a 3/4 masonry bit, was able to drill down, okay? And that worked pretty good too, okay? A little dusty, but I wore a mask for it, okay? Now, just for a quick explanation why I did this was because if I were to stick it into the concrete, then some of the concrete would settle into the grooves, and then it'll be a little bit harder for me to turn, and then you're scratching the surface. It's hot dipped, galvanized pipe. Galvanized steel. Okay, I also found out that, and I was thinking about this, kind of brainstorming, but I was able to fit a 3/4 pipe through, so that way it can kind of slide up and down. The only problem I found with that was the metals do react. Now I know in wet applications, this thing with the galvanized and copper, it's gonna degrade both metals. So that I didn't do. I thought about doing PVC pipe, but no, I pretty much settled in for the just a drill bit, masonry bit. Okay, all right. Well, thanks for watching.